Hello, thanks for watching to our YouTube channel, the YouTube channel of NGIZ Club Klingendaal. We're here almost every week with a webinar, and this time it's about the world having the same kind of problems. We all have the coronavirus, the pandemic coming over us. Everybody responds in a different manner, but the number one fight in the world is currently corona. And the hope is for some people that everybody lay down their weapons and fight the same fight against the virus. But if that's happening really, we're not sure. Today we look at the corona in a war zone, namely in Syria or in Idlib, the province that's next to the Turkish border. My name is Jos Hummelen. I'm from NGIZ Club Klingendaal. And I will ask your questions. So if you have any questions to my guests, to experts, then just type in YouTube what your questions are at Club Klingendaal, and I will make sure that there's a response. Check our Facebook and our Instagram. Sorry that this whole event is in English. We didn't communicate that properly, but hopefully you're able to switch. I'll start with an introduction, then there's two experts saying something, and then there's room enough for your Q&A. So while journalists and governments from all over the world focus on their national crisis caused by the outbreak of the coronavirus, areas with the population already affected by other humanitarian crises won't be spared. Although the first case in Syria was reported only 2 weeks ago, fear mounts that a large outbreak will be catastrophic, especially in the northwestern region around Idlib. The expectation is that the coronavirus will spread quickly and in the crowded displacement camps. While the population in the Idlib region was already stuck between the advancing government troops supported by Iran and Russia and the Turkish-backed rebel forces, a new threat entered the scene and could make the situation even more pressing. Although the situation in Idlib was regularly covered in the media, the attention shifted to reporting about the COVID-19 and governments turned inwards. Today, we invited two experts to talk about the situation in Idlib and Syria as a whole and the importance of providing aid to areas where corona might be most harmful. Aljasem was born in Syria and studied English in Aleppo. After he fled the country, he studied conflict studies and human rights at the Utrecht University. In the Netherlands, of course. He remained very committed to the human rights situation in the civil war in Syria and worked for War Child and Doctors Without Borders. He's now working as a researcher connected to the Utrecht University. Besides that, he is a program manager at the Dialogue Advisory Group and a board member of Daman, a Dutch Syrian humanitarian organization. We're very happy to have you here. Our second speaker is Mohammed Kanfash. He's the founder and director of Daman. Daman was established by Syrian refugees in the Netherlands in 2011 and organized different projects in cooperation with the Syrian local partners, providing education, food, and healthcare. Until recently, Mohammed worked for the UNHCR in Syria, Egypt, and the Netherlands, and he is now studying conflict studies and human rights as well. Mohammed is very well informed about the latest development around Idlib and the situation in Syria as a whole. So thank you very much for being here digitally. And I would like to invite Ali to start the webinar.
Thank you so much, Jos, for the introduction and also for organizing this in indeed exceptional times. The world has almost turned into a digital space, and we see no place for the normal, let's say, public space. So this is an interesting experience. The whole international community, governments, states are witnessing. However, this for Syrians, I've been talking to friends who are here in the Netherlands, and the other day also with Muhammad, of how it is very interesting to relive the experience, and for most of the Syrians. I mean, especially those who are inside, they have been living this for almost 10 years now. It's like in the lockdown and fear and anxiety. We are now in a voluntary, or as the Dutch prime minister called it, intelligent lockdown. But in Syria, people are living in a forced and dangerous lockdown. So I just wanted to highlight this, that Syrians have been living into this for almost 10 years. We were amongst the luckiest, Muhammad and I and all who are here in the Netherlands and generally in Europe. So and indeed the focus is very much on the government's responses, rather than on the other people's. I mean, that is relative, but this is what we have been witnessing, that all other countries, governments, people's let's say experiences or insecurities have taken back seat, and this is what we are seeing in different contexts, not only Syria. As we are going to focus only on Syria, I'm just going to start directly and give a brief political and security background to what is going on and what has been happening since the end of 2019 and the escalation in February and early March between the Russians, Turks, with the use of their proxies on the ground. I mean, Mohammed is going to talk about the numbers, figures, what has changed. But for me, I see the ceasefire or the Putin-Erdogan agreement that was kind of reached out on March the 5th is a fragile one, and it is just for the parties or the groups on the ground to take a breath and reconfigure their resources and constituents. So with the COVID-19 approaching or hovering around, it is going to be a disaster if this breaks, or if an outbreak would pop up. And we have just received the news actually from Syria that the first death was recorded today, and it is in the government-controlled areas. So, considering all the precautions and the measures the Assad regime is taking, still, things are going out of control. They are imposing strict curfews and measures. People are not daring to go out. However, there was a case just. It was a breaking news. So you can imagine how the situation would be in Idlib, in northern Aleppo, in literally concentrated camps in the north. So I think talking about the security and humanitarian situation. I see the deal between Putin and Erdogan is very fragile. The ceasefire is going to hold for a while, but it's going to break or there is going to be a conflict outbreak soon. This is my reading of the situation. The humanitarian situation remains the same, because there are more than around 1 million displaced people. Those people are not allowed to go back to their homes. So this is an indication of what, or this is a moment to ask a question: what does this agreement mean? If nothing on the ground changed, so what does it mean for the local population? They are still trapped in the north. They are literally on the move. There is no roof for them to be protected. So in the near future, they will feel kind of nothing changed, and also the situation on the ground is still bad. Mohammed is going to talk about all the medical responses, etc. Just I think looking at the military and political landscape, there are many different groups operating on the ground, and also responses, NGOs, but this is not sufficient. We have around 4 million people in the area. 1 million were just recently added to that number. So it is very difficult in terms of access and aid. We see it's very politicized, because the European countries and the EU in general are not willing to engage, because they use the justification that HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or formerly Nusra Front, is operating there. So they say, we are not going to be involved in this, because this is a designated terrorist group. We are not going to engage. However, there are a lot of ways to engage, or to deliver aid, or make responses, and prepare for the worst. 2 or 3 days ago, WHO, World Health Organization, has sent in 300 COVID-19 tests, just to test the suspected cases, but this is nothing compared to the 4 million people you have. So we see unwillingness to engage or to help in this crisis, and I'm sorry to say that the world or the international community is happy that it's going to be, if it happens, it's going to be in one geographical area, that it is not going to affect other countries. So this is bad to hear. The key factor in northwest Syria, or the main 2 players, are the Russians and the Turks. If you don't engage both these actors, it is going to be very difficult. We know, I can talk on the Dutch, sensitivity around, approaching the Russians, and the downing of the plane, etc. So it is very sensitive for them. But if you want to alleviate suffering, you have to come up with the creative initiatives and ideas to address the needs in the near future. So I'm going to stop here, because I think Muhammad has more figures and updates on the situation medically on the ground. And if there are any political security related questions, I'm happy to answer during the course of the meeting.
Thank you, Ali. And if everybody who is watching this, you can always ask questions in the YouTube chat box. So if I understand you correctly, you're now afraid that the COVID-19 will spread rapidly in the camps and people are stuck. And if that's not the case, then you're afraid of what's coming next when the ceasefire will be broken. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, both are bad, and these are two I see foreseeable and close to happen scenarios in the near future. Because if you look at like on the ground, the other day in the preparation for this, I was talking to some friends and families. I was telling them, here in the Netherlands we have these regulations. You keep distance, 1.5 meter, wash your hands. They were laughing. They were saying, it's like, are you kidding? This is a joke. So how can I keep a distance when my tent is literally next to my neighbor's tent? If my neighbor would sneeze, it would come into my tent. So like at that moment, I felt like this is beyond imagination.
Yeah.
So you imagine that, and there are still movements. People are, because even awareness is not high. I mean, because people are talking about, this is a conspiracy theory. It is only affecting
Yeah.
these countries who are receiving tourists, etc. We have never been exposed to others, but they are not aware that they are receive there are exports. People are receiving commodities, goods, etc. They are touching stuff, but they don't have that awareness that
Okay.
the virus can stay for 12 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine in the Netherlands it's hard to make everybody aware of the
Yeah.
situation with working media, with NL alert on your phone. Thank
Yeah.
you. We'll talk about that later. Let's go to Mohammed. Can you tell us what you wanted to tell us?
Well, let me start by saying thanks a lot for the invitation. Thanks also for taking the time to be online to listen to an update about the situation in Syria and the potential outbreak of Corona. I hope that you, your loved ones, everyone that is listening are safe and healthy. I have to say this is the first time that I speak to a screen where I don't see anyone. So if that might look a bit weird, but bear with me.
You're
Thanks to
doing
Ali.
great, Mohammed. You're doing great.
Okay. Ali has already told us about the political situation. Let me try and paint a different picture. Right now in Syria, we have three different areas of control. We have the regime-controlled area, which is about 63% of the total of Syria. We have the opposition-held areas, which is in Idlib and northern Aleppo, and we have a third area under the control of the so-called self-administration, which is the Kurdish militia, Kurdish SDF forces. So far, all the three countries, all the three spheres of control share one thing. All of them do not have the capacity to respond to a potential corona outbreak. Let's start by some numbers to understand where we are right now in Syria. For example, 70% of all health workers have fled the country. It's been 10 years, and the exodus of health practitioners that have left is just amazingly big. It's estimated around 70%. We also have around 1,000 health practitioners that have died throughout the conflict, and more or less half of the public hospitals are not operating properly. The government, the regime, the opposition, or the SDF do not have also the finances to work on protective gears or on test kits. So far, we see three different responses to the corona. The most aggressive one has been under the regime. They have indeed implemented a draconian set of measures to slow down the potential outbreak of the disease. Think of a curfew. Think of a total freeze of movement between countryside, between cities. We're also talking about a total, more or less, freeze of social life. There are sterilization campaigns. They have set up a few quarantine centers, albeit not very good ones. The SDF area, or the Kurdish controlled areas, have more or less followed suit in terms of these measures. However, the difference between the two is that the regime is in a position to impose that. After 6 in the evening, everybody has to stay at home. And they have been vigorously implementing that, using police, using intelligence, using the army, or using their coercive capacities. The opposition-held areas, the situation is way different. First of all, let's start also by some statistics to understand what's happening in these areas, or what do we have. In the opposition-held areas, we're talking about 3.5 million people. 70% of them are internally displaced. So in Idlib alone, prior to December 2019, we are talking about 1.2 million internally displaced people. After the recent attacks by the Assad and its allies, we can add about 950,000 people. About 2.3 million people are living in IDP camps. And when we're talking about camps, we have around approximately 1,270 camps. 1/3 of those are unofficial settlements. And although unofficial settlements give the rest of the camps, or it gives a sense that the camps are better, but the situation is horrible in this case. We are already, our doctors are on the ground, and our doctors already report outbreak of different diseases. We are talking about lice, we're talking about scabies, and we're talking about leishmaniasis. So a potential outbreak of corona would be very destructive, would be catastrophic if it takes place in this area. Idlib, or the opposition-held areas, are suffering from, there are many challenges in these areas. Think of lack of water, for example, lack of food, lack of shelter. Thousands of people do not have shelter. Thousands of people do not even have a tent. And the rest, those who have tents, have had to share their tents with other people. So exactly as Ali said, in a case of a potential outbreak of a corona, people can't practice social isolation. People can't practice self-quarantine. The NGOs and the local authorities on the ground have tried to implement a response plan, but there are a few challenges. First of all, there are no resources. So the resources have already been depleted because of all the ongoing attacks on the area. Number two, there are socioeconomic conditions that do not allow self-quarantine. In the position-held areas, already the majority depend on humanitarian aid and on their daily work. If they don't work, they don't eat. So people are not necessarily abiding by self-quarantine or by staying at home. And the local authorities do not have the possibility or the power to enforce that. And if quarantine is imposed, think of a situation where we have thousands of tents, overcrowded, densely populated areas, where there is no latrine, there is no water, there is no hygiene, there is no sanitation. On top of that, summer is approaching, so doctors are already afraid, next to corona, of potential outbreak of cholera, for example, or of leishmaniasis, or of scabies. Well, what does the people of Eastern Ghouta, of Idlib and northern Aleppo have? According to SAMS, one of the biggest Syrian NGOs that is working in the north, so far we have 201 intensive care units. For 3.5 million people, we have 200 intensive care units, of which only 59 have ventilators. I tried to have a percentage. My phone wouldn't give it to me. The number just doesn't act. This is unbelievably, it's going to be a big deal if there's an outbreak. We have 1 million people that live in tents. These tents, as I said, are not necessarily good for any solution in the future. I will hold on here, but there are a few points that I want to raise now that we can potentially or hopefully discuss later. There are a few questions. Are there any other vulnerable population? Yes, next to opposition-held areas and more or less all of Syria is vulnerable, but there is also the detainees. Why is it important? This is something that we should cover. Should we engage with actors? This is also something that I would like to get back to during the questions and answers. And the potential politicization or instrumentalization of Corona by the different actors on the ground. And with that, I will end up my intervention for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. We'll start the second half an hour now with questions. And what Mohammed said in the end of his introduction, it's very important to also talk about what we as UN, as European Union, as whoever, maybe part of an NGO can do. This is important because if let's say just me, if I listen to these stories, I'll get a little bit depressed or a little bit, and that's my first question to you both. How well you study conflict studies, you study human rights, you have a Syrian background. How do you stay positive in these times, or do you also sometimes shy away from these issues and try and go to the zoo, the pre-corona possibilities to get your hand empty and do something else? How do you stay positive?
I can't hear you, to be honest.
Ali, maybe you can answer the question first.
Yeah. So yeah, with your question, how do we stay positive? Actually, this is a very difficult question because this is something that you don't wish for your enemy. But when you are in a crisis like this, you by trying to help your fellow citizens, people who are in need, and for me this can feel good for me, because if I don't share these stories, you would never imagine how the situation is on the ground. So this is for me a way of feeling positive, sharing stories, telling how terrible the situation is on the ground, and at the same time how privileged we are here in the Netherlands and in all these countries. So this is for me like a moment of reflection of the luxury, literally, although it's like I was when the curfew, not curfew, when the lockdown and the social distancing, these things started, I was people were asking me many times, how does it feel? It feels bad, but also for me to relive the experience, but at the same time to live it in the eyes, or like putting myself in Idlib's people's shoes, and also in my family's shoes who are still there in the north. So a way to feel positive is to share their stories, to make their voices heard, because it is not, because when you talk, people always say, it is too complicated, this politics, Erdogan is trying to do these nasty things. We cannot deal with Putin. But there are a lot of ways that you can engage with, and just ignore those politicians or idiots. So this is not a justification. This is, you are escaping. You are trying to avoid these things because you feel guilty inside yourself, to blame it on politicians. But at the same time, you can do something. So this is also my feeling and also my message to the audience, that you can do something. Don't blame it on others. Whenever, wherever, and whenever you can do something, this is the moment.
Oh, well, that's a message of hope. We'll hope to get to that later. Mohammed, what is your how do you stay positive in these dark and grim times?
Well, you asked if we shy away. The only thing that I'm ashamed of, or I shy away from, is answering such a question when there are people who are living that. What we're doing right now is exactly as Ali has said. We're just trying to get the message across. This is something that we have to do. It's a luxury to just sit and not do anything. And yeah, exactly. It's good to feel that you're trying to help. Here, I would like to thank our team that is working on the ground, that is moving from one camp to another, trying to help. These are the actual ones whom or to whom the question should be asked. How do you cope? How do you carry on? And to be honest, sometimes I do think about that. I don't think I have an answer. These guys who are on the ground or delivering food or delivering aid, water, healthcare, we should be thinking of them. These are the ones who should be getting all the questions and all the support.
All right, I'll go to the listeners' questions. There's Laubox. He is asking, should we be worried the government is hiding the real COVID cases as they don't want panic outbreak in the camps? So I think he's talking about the opposition held areas there.
Okay. To whom the question is?
Yeah, sorry, Mohammed. I think that's this is something for you.
Okay. Well, the government does not have control over the camps in the north,
No.
but they do have their own camps. They do have their own population of internally displaced. This is one way of this takes me back to the politicization or instrumentalization of the corona. The Assad regime has just recently admitted that there was a limited outbreak of 5 cases. Today, the first death has been reported. I don't have the precise information, but my analysis is that at the beginning the regime will try and suppress any info in order to somehow have things under control. However, things might change in the future, because you can't hide an outbreak. You can't hide it when people are dying on the streets. In the north, to the contrary, I think the opposition will be telling about any potential case because they need the help. The use or the instrumentalization of corona is different. The Assad is gonna try and use it to break sanctions, to gain more rapprochement and then the rapprochement with the regional countries, like what happened in UAE. For the time being, the regime has an interest in showing that they are in control, that what they're doing is okay and or has a good effect, good impact. But with time, I think they will let go if things get worse. I have to say, I'm not usually on the same page with the Assad regime. However, in this particular case, they do seem to be in the driver's seat. Are they concealing information? Nobody knows. But so far, the measures that they have implemented are quite strong, and I hope that there are no cases to be hidden. But that is something to be seen in the future.
Yeah. Today I read in the Volkskrant that the Chinese ciphers aren't in Wuhan aren't even correct, not even remotely. It's like 8 times the double of what they were saying. Let's go to the next question. I'll combine 2 questions. Firstly, what does Daman do, or do the people in Idlib have to rely on foreign help let's say, support from either Russia or the Western nations? I'll ask that to Ali.
I think Muhammad is very well positioned to answer this question because he has been in contact with the team on the ground.
Let's switch to Muhammad.
Okay.
Well, our team is part of the contingency plan for the potential corona outbreak, since they are we have a medical team, but we have our own small medical center in which we're trying to respond to the need of the local population. And also recently we've been conducting camp visits in order to try and help the internally displaced people who don't have the money to make it to the city, or do not have are quite injured or badly injured, or too weak to approach us. This is number one. Number two, the Russians have not been helping Idlib at all. The only thing that they've been giving the people of Idlib is bombs so far. Unfortunately, the international community has not lived up to its commitment or to its humanitarian responsibilities. The West has been providing money to local NGOs that are working on the ground. Our NGO is small in comparison to other Syrian NGOs that are very active there. But I'm afraid there is, sorry, there is quite a lot to be done by the West. We need more money, we need more resources, we need more kits, and we need more attention on Idlib.
Attention by whom?
Attention by people like ourselves, attention by politicians, attention by practitioners, those who are sitting in their offices working on humanitarian aid. The situation, no matter the numbers, do not convey the realities on the ground.
Maybe the situation is a little bit not as severe, but a little bit as in Moria, a camp on Lesbos in Greece. Now the action is SOS Moria, right? Would you think a action of practitioners and doctors like that would help the region?
We do have the doctors. I don't think we need any health. What we need the instruments. We need ventilators. We need preventive. We need kits. We need gowns. If that is sent to Syria, the situation would be fine.
Question by Jelle. Ali, do you think a refugee buffer organized by the UN will offer a solution for the desperate situation of the population in Idlib?
A refugee buffer?
Yes.
Okay, that's an interesting question. I mean, if you look at the situation on the ground, refugees, civilians, let's put them in one basket, have never been paid attention to. So they are the last ones to be considered in any solution. And just going back to what I mentioned earlier in my introduction, if they would care about civilians or IDPs in the north, they would have negotiated or tried to negotiate their return to their homes, because if you look at their definition, they are civilians. They are not combatants. So if you are fighting a battle, so those are the ones who fled. If they want to come back, there are no guarantees. So if you would implement a refugee buffer in the north, for what and of whom? So this is the thing. And while there are wide areas, swaths of geographies that are uninhabited. So if you want to help those people, just negotiate a corridor, a humanitarian corridor, and guarantees that they will not be persecuted for where they are from. Because now the international politicians, international community, the UN, all agencies who are working on Syria know very well what might happen to people who go back to regime areas. So this is something not jamming people in one place and just lock them down. So this is not a solution. I don't think this would be a good solution, because we are talking about um, large numbers of people in a small geographical areas, and our discussion is about corona. So if there is one case, so that can easily multiplied by tens and by hundreds in 2 days, in you can imagine in 1 week. So I don't think this is a solution, because it's about people cannot uh, kind of implement a social distancing of 1.5 meter while they are, let's say, sleeping or kind of living, let alone when they go to the market and etc.
Yeah, thanks. Question to, I think, Ali, but I'm not quite sure. In my words, we have talked about the closed borders, but sometimes, especially for smugglers and people who still want to get out of these camps and out of the area. Question by Sarah Riendieu. What changes in the foreseeable future for these people, for smugglers, and for refugees who want to travel still to Europe?
I mean, that question has two faults, because when we talk about smugglers or people's movement, we have two contexts. First, the inside Syria, and the second is those who are trapped or who are living in Turkey. So and both of them are very much politicized. We saw the trend or the wave when Turkish officials were talking about literally opening the gates in front of refugees, and just I would like to highlight something here. People who were crossing, or people who or refugees who are in Turkey, are not only Syrians. You have a lot of Afghans, Iranians, Iraqis, etc., and of course there are also Syrians. So this is one thing. For smugglers, it's always like a flourishing business. But at in the first place, it's a politicized, let's say, crisis. If politicians kind of don't agree or disagree with each other, they would use this card, and we have seen this clearly. People were not at the climax of the fighting and confrontations between Assad and the opposition in the north. No refugee, no, there was no movement, or refugees couldn't make it, or people couldn't escape into Turkey. So that was you see the politicization of this. So Turkey didn't want more people to get into Turkey. However, or on the other hand, on the other side, there were more than 150,000 people who crossed in 1 week from Edirne or from Turkey into Greece. So you see how much it is politicized. It is not about smugglers. It is about the political will and the politicization of the crises, like the refugee ones, on the two folds.
If I may add something here.
Yes, you may.
Okay, you know what they say: money doesn't buy you love, but money does buy you access to Europe. So if the question is, should we be afraid that somebody with a corona infection manages to pass from a particular area to Europe? Yes, that should be on the list. And why do I say that? Because this is something that we should take into consideration when we prepare our response to what's happening. We live in an interconnected world, be it through aviation or be it through smuggling. We've seen what happened in Wuhan and how that moved to Europe and all over the globe. And if something happens in Idlib or in the border region or wherever, don't think that because a few hundred guards have closed down this border or that, we are safe. This is not the case.
Right. Thank you both. Henrik Boeyer has 2 questions. So whoever who want to answer. The 2 questions that are that arose in his mind are there signs that the virus is used as a weapon? And he doesn't mean in the literal sense of the word, but also, for example, if you do not surrender, then medical help or that certain ethnic groups are postponed. The second question is, what is that? Causes fraternization among the population that is not directly involved in the war. So a common enemy. So the whole of Syria has what is it? Maybe 6 or 7 different groups still fighting. They all have a common enemy in Corona. Does that help? Does that bring people together? But let's first go to the first question: if Corona is used as a weapon.
Yeah, I can jump in and to answer this question, and I would like to link this to the regime, to the Assad's regime mentality. I mean, Assad has, since day one, since Assad the father in the 70s. So Syria is a rentier state. It's a clientelist state. So those who are, it is not about severity of or need of treatment or support, help, etc. This is in general. It is those who are loyal would be given the priority, whatever. Like even if it is first aid. So this is just an example of why we see people are very much worried and also adhering to the curfews, to the measures the regime has been taking, because they know very well if they get the virus, they will not receive any help, because there will be other people who have the priorities. So it's very much also politicized within the regime layers. Let's call it. So it's a rentier regime, even internally, and also a clientelist. So those who serve the regime the most will be treated first, and those who are on the margins. So there's the center and the periphery. Those who are on the margin, they will not get a chance, and they will die on the streets. And just a small example, we have seen that also, although way more prepared, we have seen that also in Iran. There were a lot of reports talking about loyalties in terms of treatment. And this is even multiplied by 10 or 15 in the Syrian case.
And the second question about the common enemy, can you answer the question, Mohammed?
I will try, but I will also add a few lines to what Ali has said. The regime has indeed weaponized the use of healthcare. There were many people that were killed in hospitals. Hospitals were bombed. For example, only between the end of 2019, early 2020, 76 hospitals in the Idlib area were bombed, were attacked. I do believe that the regime will be prioritizing healthcare for its own people, if we may say. However, I don't think that the regime will be using that the virus as a weapon. This is a fire in the bush that you can't control. If you allow it to spread, there is no way that they can protect themselves. So while there will be prioritization of healthcare to some segments of the society, I don't think that the virus will be used as a weapon. Is this a common enemy? I've spoken to people in all the areas. Nobody wish any other area any ill. They all are hopeful that this is a summer cloud that will pass and will not affect all of them. Although we're talking about 3 different areas under the different control of actors, however, there is movement between all these all these 3 areas, either for trade or via smuggling, or because of the humanitarian industry that goes from one area to another. So if there's an outbreak in one area, there's no guarantees that it won't move to the other. In that sense, they all share the same destiny, and they all share the same fear, and hopefully they will all walk out of this on the same heart. Although I highly doubt that.
Yes. Ali, we spoke about solutions earlier. And I said, let's go to solutions later. I think now is the time. What do you think? It's always complicated, I think, but what do you think is the start of a solution in the Idlib area to peace and to safety out of the coronavirus?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, a quick response at this time, it would be like indeed just copying Muhammad here on, you know, sending in more aid and also equipment, because that is what people need now. Because if there is an outbreak, they want to have the minimum. People on the ground don't have the minimum, and also like the percentage is too low to address a potential outbreak. So people should take initiatives. There are a lot of, you know, NGOs. There are a lot of volunteers on the ground. We are more than happy to provide guidance, to start a campaign or anything. I mean, as to bring to the fore what happened in Australia, the fires, and how people were collecting donations here of 5 and 5. So this is something that these good examples that should be copied again and again. If we wait for governments and politicians, I'm afraid it will be too late. We all can do something.
Mohammed, can you add something here? I think you can.
I hope so. Number one, do donate. Exactly as Ali said, do not wait for your government, do not wait for the politicians. They're looking for their own masks. For the time being, we need to stand by each other, donate, write to these politicians, write to the practitioners. In your own job where you're working, try and think of these people. This is not the time to speak about politics. I would love to be here online and badmouth the Assad regime. I have millions of stories to tell. We need aid to all of Syria. We need aid to areas under the control of the regime, regardless of how despicable their behavior has been over the last 10 years or 50 years. We need aid in the self-administration area. We also need it in Idlib. This is something that this is the time to engage all actors, including the regime, including the Russians, including the Turks, also some unsavvy groups in Idlib. If we don't act now, we will regret it definitely later. our team in Daman, although we're not engaged directly in the fight against Corona so far, and I hope we never have to, because this means that there is an outbreak. But we're also fighting other epidemics such as lice, scabies, and leishmaniasis. So you can also donate, and we can also work on that. There are also other Syrian NGOs such as Violet, such as Mulham Team. They are doing a great job. Try and help them and try and support those people who need you the most.
Is it possible to support Daman as well?
Yes, Daman is a Syrian Dutch NGO. We have a bank account here in the Netherlands, so you can donate. You can go to our website. You can go to social media. We are an AMBI, so any donation that is made to Daman could be deducted from taxes. Spread the word, do it yourself, but also tell the people in your surrounding. We can very much need your support.
Yeah. Let's go to the last question of Sarah Riendo. He's or she is asking, many IOS have recalled many of their international volunteers in the past weeks. Who fills this void? And they coordinating services more remotely or downgrading services in other humanitarian aid areas? Maybe Mohammed, can you answer this question?
Indeed, many international actors have been evacuating the area, also including those that are working in Turkey. The bulk of the work is being carried out by Syrians, by Syrian professionals, but also by Syrian NGOs. Also in the areas in the regime, under the regime control, for example, WHO teams and Red Crescent teams have ceased their activities in terms of mobile medical clinics, so on and so forth. So it's more or less the locals who have to deal with all the current issues at hand. That's why support to local NGOs is more important now than ever.
Ali, you want to add something or anything of this whole webinar, because we're gonna stop?
No, just a final thing. I mean,
sure.
Yeah, you can do something. So this is my message. If you have the willingness, there are a lot of ways to help people in need. And thank you so much for organizing this. I hope that we could contribute something to the to the discussion, and also add add value to what you are doing, guys.
Yeah. Just 8 new cases in Syria of the coronavirus.
Yeah, expect more. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's the government. Everyone is. I mean, the regime is very much hiding because of the panic. Yeah.
So thank you again, and you guys, if you're looking at YouTube, leave a remark for these two guys, and also, of course, you know how to find Daman and donate if you want to. We didn't make this program as a sponsored program or whatever, but it came up, and I think it's always good to spread that word instead of the virus. A special thanks to everybody who asked questions in the YouTube channel, and of course a special thanks to Jelle Bakker and Marcel Wolters. Marcel Wolters is the MW that you saw in your screen the whole time. He's our technical man. This YouTube video will be available later to everybody. So if you want to share later, please do so. And also check our Facebook and Instagram for our next webinar that will be about Bolsonaro in Brazil, the president. And also in that case, we will not only look at how he deals with the coronavirus, or he doesn't want to deal with the coronavirus, but also in Brazil in the larger in a larger view. He's called the Trump of South America. So let's see what he did in his first year as president. So once again, Ali and Mohammed, thank you so much. And to everybody else, see you next week on our next webinar about Brazil.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks. Stay safe and healthy.
Stay safe.
Thanks.